I think right now a lot of us are being triggered. Um, we're being triggered by things that maybe we thought were healed in the past, things that we thought we could finally lay to rest, and put in the past, and now some of these things are kind of rearing their ugly head again. Some things around safety, security, worthiness. These are definitely speaking from my own perspective anyway. Um, purpose. What is my purpose? And um, where do we go from here in trying to create this new world that we are we are stepping into and we are creating, as individuals in our own lives and also in the collective. So I think we're just at a really, really important important time in human history where everything's really just been turned upside down. And I have always seen crisis to be as an opportunity. I recently learned from a friend of mine that the Chinese symbol for crisis is the same as the symbol for opportunity. And I just think that that's really, telling and really beautiful, and that I think we have a lot to learn from that. And in my own experience of death and loss and grief, has come a great deal of personal transformation, has come a great deal of finding my inner strength and finding my inner power, learning how to take, everything that I've been through and how to integrate it into me, into Angela's being, into my life in a way that is helpful and supportive to myself and to somebody else. So, at least for me in my life, I have learned how to take obstacles with, a sense of faith. And I don't mean faith necessarily in religion, although that can be a part of it, for me and maybe for others too. When we're faced with adversities or adverse events that happen in our lives, um, no matter what that is, it can be losing a job, it can be a death, it can be a divorce, a breakup, um, it can be a financial problem, illness. It can be so many different things that inevitably in our human experience we are going to encounter at some time or another. And so the goal can never be to necessarily live stress free or problem free. I'm sure that sounds really great on the outside, but in reality, negative situations and in circumstances that we come across and we face transform us, and they really grow. They really help us grow into more enlightened, um, and empowered individuals. It helps us to become, higher versions of ourselves, I should say. So for that reason, I have a lot of reasons to be grateful for some of the obstacles that I have been faced with in my life. And I just want to, share that so that if you're going through something right now that feels impossible to deal with, just know that this too shall pass. And when it does, you will emerge from this a completely different person. And for some people, that's really exciting. And, but for some people, that can actually be really scary too. And I've definitely been one of those people. So, it's never like super comforting to not know what's around the corner, especially when we're going through something that's really hard. and uncertain, it really threatens our sense of safety and our sense of security. And a lot of us are planners. We have to know what's around the corner. We just have to know, and we have to have a sense of control. We feel like we have to have a handle on our lives, and we have to control the direction of the ship. And when things come up in our lives like this, like whatever it is, it maybe if you're going through something, it can feel like a complete loss of control. And it can just be really scary. So I just want to encourage people to acknowledge your inner fear and acknowledge the anxieties that maybe you are facing right now and that you're feeling, and to give it some space to breathe and to make its voice heard. I believe that every emotion has a purpose. And so sometimes we tend to shun away negative emotions because they're not desirable. We are such a culture that is so focused on happiness and everything going our way. And of course, we want those things. Of course, we want to live happy lives without troubles and without issues and problems, but that's just not reality. And so we have to have a space for the other side. We have to hold a space for hurt and pain and loss and grief, and we have to honor it and hold it and love it, just like we love all of the happy, acceptable emotions and parts of ourselves. When we deny and disown the pieces of us that are not desirable, we are really disowning a part of ourselves. So a friend of mine recently posted about trying to raise above her ego and trying to not quiet her ego, but maybe that was a part of it. It was just about trying to rise above the ego and almost making the ego to be a bad thing. And I understand where that comes from, because the ego is where a lot of our fear voice comes from. It's where we tend to project negative or false beliefs in ourselves, each other, and the world can come from the ego. And so from the outside, that can seem like a negative part of ourselves, something that needs to be fixed or changed or overcome or suppressed even. But I recently had this vision. I was in sort of like an awake sleep state, and I saw myself as two parts of myself. One of my parts was my ego, and my ego part was washing dishes at the sink. And the other part was my higher self, who was drying off the dishes. And these two parts of myself were almost behaving like how friends would behave, would do if they were cleaning up after a meal that they had shared together, and just having casual conversation with each other. And my ego self was expressing fears and just like self-doubts, and just like, oh my God, I'm so nervous about starting a YouTube channel, and I'm so nervous to have my face on camera, and I'm really not comfortable with the sound of my voice sometimes, and I have a lot of issues around confidence and things like that, and just everything that I wanted, that I just was feeling about like being insecure, basically. And my ego self was just sharing with my higher self, and my higher self was just like listening intently as she was drying the dishes and she was just smiling and nodding and holding space for my ego, and while also reassuring my ego self that it was okay to feel this way, um, that it wasn't wrong or bad, or evil or stupid or ridiculous or anything like that. And it was just assuring that, like, all of these parts of you are us. And that's what it felt like. It just felt like I was both parts, and I am both parts. And sort of the dishes kind of represented the messiness of life. And even after you share a great meal, sometimes there can be a big mess to clean up at the end. So messes aren't always good or bad. And so this mess that we were cleaning up just sort of represented the messiness of life. And it was kind of like a really cool symbol. And I really don't know what made me come up with this little like symbol for my parts, but it has really stuck with me these last few days. And I shared it on my friend's page under her comments, and I don't know, it just like, I just wanted to share that with you guys too. Maybe you can resonate with that and just remember that we all have parts of ourselves that we're not really wanting to put out there, and that we're not really sure about, and that we doubt in ourselves, but that's okay. And it's just important to hold space for all of it. The word integration to me is just really, really important, and it's about integrating the shadow self, into the self, and really just embodying everything that you are, the good, bad, and I don't believe in good or bad, but it's just the way that we sometimes can see ourselves as good parts and bad parts, but they're really just us. So it's really about holding accountability for it is the other piece of that too, because on the other side of the coin, you can have all of these negative beliefs and project them onto other people, and actually be in a state of war with another. We can be in a state of war with ourselves, with other people, and the world, if you're not careful, and if you're not integrating your parts with yourself and holding accountability for everything in your system, in your technology. So yeah, I just think it's really important that we integrate all of it into us, and that we fully accept ourselves and love ourselves fully and unconditionally for who we are. And when we do that, we don't feel the need to lash out. We don't feel the need to fight or start war with the world, with somebody else in the world. Because we know better. We know that there's no resolution from war. We can only find resolution in love and acceptance and healing of ourselves, each other, in the world. And that is how we are going to find a state of a higher consciousness, a state of wholeness, a state of integration on this planet. That's how we're going to find restitution, and that's how we're going to heal this planet, and that's how we're going to ultimately find our own version of heaven on earth, is going to be through our own inner healing work and the love and acceptance of ourselves, the world, and everything in it. And that means respecting all living things, ourselves absolutely included in the equation. As an empath, it's really easy to get lost in wanting to serve everybody else and leaving ourselves out of the equation. A few months ago, I came across Amanda Flaker's page on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on here on YouTube, and she talks a lot about this, about putting ourselves in the equation in everything that we do. And she is really speaking to empaths who are entrepreneurs. So, but whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I think it's really important that we do that we always keep ourselves in the equation, that we listen to what our needs are, and we're trying to meet those needs in ways that honor ourselves, ways that honor each other, and ways that honor the planet. And that doesn't mean making other people happy all the time. And that's been something that has been challenging for me in the past, because I somehow started to believe that rocking the boat or creating conflict in the relationships around me was wrong and bad, and that it made me a burden or unlikable or unlovable. And so I started to abandon myself to please other people so that I would feel this really a false sense of security, so that I wouldn't be abandoned by the people around me. But I was abandoning myself for a sense of false sense for a false sense of security, if that makes sense. So when I finally started to put myself in the equation and love and honor myself in a way that sometimes didn't please other people, it wasn't easy at first, because I did receive some, I lost relationships that way. I had to give up relationships that way. Is really the truth of the matter. I had to leave. I had to leave that group of people. And it was, at first it was really tempting to make that person the bad guy. It was tempting to make the people in that group bad, and but they, sometimes they could be disrespectful to me, and I took it a lot of the times. But I really learned through that experience that we really do teach people how to treat us. And if you're not loving and honoring yourself, and you're just letting people treat you badly, you really have nobody to not blame, but like, you really need to realize that you have a part in that you have a role in that relationship, because a relationship takes two people. It's never just one-sided. So I just think it's important that we really hold space for honoring where we are in our lives right now. And maybe you're in a situation that is abusive or violent, or you're just not able to get out of right now in this moment. But also just, and if you are one of those people, just know that at some point there will come a window of opportunity for you. At some point there will come a space will open up in your situation when the time is right, and when you're ready. So I never ever want to come across as like blaming the victim, because that is so not the case, with this mentality of accountability and owning where we are in our lives, and being an active player in our lives. It's not about blame to the self. And a lot of it has to do with self-forgiveness too. We have to really learn to forgive our past selves for maybe making those decisions that we made that got us into the situation where we are today. But we were in a different place then when we made those decisions, and we acted from the highest perspective that we could in that moment. We made the best decision that we could at that time, and that's okay. So there has to be an aspect of self-forgiveness always when you are trying to find the door to leave a situation that you don't want to be in anymore. You have to forgive yourself, and don't beat yourself up over that. So as much as it's about not blaming the other, it's not about blaming yourself either. And I just really want to stress that. So I think I'll keep this here, and thank you so much for listening, and I'll try to post something else real soon. Bye bye.